Hi, I'm Amayika Kumara and I'm Business Director of Access IQ.
And I'm Sarah Police and I'm the Web Accessibility Evangelist of Access IQ.
Access IQ is a not-for-profit and we were set up by an organisation called Media Access Australia, and we advocate for equal access to information and technology for users of all abilities. Access IQ in particular deals with web accessibility, and web accessibility is seen as an increasingly important initiative to adopt by businesses and government. We've got an extensive website which is freely available, and it offers quite a lot of information and content resources that really help people understand specific aspects of accessibility. There are a large portion of the population who have difficulty in accessing web-based products and information, and we shouldn't be choosing whether they access it or not. Web practice or web accessibility is actually best practice and not that hard to implement when you actually understand what you need to do. So it's important because people who have disabilities actually benefit significantly from using the internet in so many ways. So people who have vision impairment perhaps don't have to go to the store to purchase products and grapple with labels if their assistive technology helps them understand what they're purchasing, and they can purchase online with ease. If I was to ask a company, could you do with 20% more customers, I'm sure they'd all answer yes. And at the moment, the statistics are reflecting that approximately 20% of Australians suffer from some sort of disability that could affect their ability to use the internet. In relation to that, for businesses and government, one of the other things is that we're all pushing our communications towards the digital channel, and organisations have made assumptions about cost savings and improvements in terms of customer service and engagement. And those assumptions can only really be achieved if we include accessibility, because as soon as the digital channel or the digital application is not accessible to someone, that customer is not satisfied and needs to seek information elsewhere. So they might go back and use the call centre. And call centre technology is extremely more expensive than, or significantly more expensive than the website. And so all of their assumptions have been blown out of the water, because something that should cost maybe 30 cents ends up costing $3.50 to service. And so these are some considerations that I don't believe organisations and government are really taking into account these days.
The best way to approach accessibility is actually from a project lifecycle perspective. So often it's left to the developer as their primary responsibility, but actually the different requirements of accessibility can be addressed right from the beginning, from the design phase through to development, and then also the content authoring once you pass that on to a client.
The government has mandated accessibility through their National Transition Strategy. That states that federal government websites and state government websites need to be compliant to a specific level by the end of 2014. So they're including accessibility as part of their procurement contracts. Whether they actually understand the finer details of being able to test whether the end solution is accessible or not is irrelevant. What they're saying is that as soon as someone comes up with a complaint that they can't access the website because it's inaccessible, then the onus for the responsibility will go back on the vendor. And so from that perspective, digital agencies really should be aware of what the requirements are. And you really wouldn't want to be in a situation where you're accepting a contract where the requirement comes through that it must be accessible and you don't really know what you're doing.
One of the really important things for accessibility, and I think this is really important for digital agencies in particular, is not to buy into a lot of the myths that are still around about accessibility. That if you've got an accessible website, it's a boring website, that you can't use dynamic content. We've actually moved well and truly past that, but often the perception of accessibility is still stuck back in 5-10 years ago. Look into some of the new technologies. One of the really interesting ones is a technology called Wayria, and essentially that is for rich internet applications. So when you are using dynamic content that is driven by JavaScript or Ajax, for instance, you don't actually have to remove that from your website anymore. This is a particular standard that actually adds HTML attributes that communicates information about that dynamic content through to a screen reader. It's Accessibility to me is actually about innovation. You know, we look at the user experience for people, and this is just looking at the user experience for a wider set of people, including people with disabilities. Approach it as a challenge rather than something that, you know, is just something you have to do and you just find it difficult and uninspiring.